Hello, welcome to another live Google Hangout on the Living Income Guaranteed. And today we have prepared a very cool and dynamic process that we will be walking through with our guest today, discussing the news roundup that we hadn't done actually for the entire year. And it is precisely a good timing because 2015 has been quite the year where basic income, we've noticed altogether that basic income has been gaining momentum all over the media and in people's consideration as a possible solution for the most really difficult times in economy and in essence worldwide that we have been witnessing. And it's been very encouraging to see many efforts from various countries joining together toward promoting a basic income as a solution. So we have entitled this Designing a New Capitalism, because we are living in a capitalist system, and the best way to start promoting solutions is precisely by looking at the system that we are currently living in and finding ways within it that can be changed, aligned, and so transform it into a system that can be working for everyone. So I'd like to introduce our guest today, Jeanne Kenney from New York. Hi, Jeanne. Welcome to the Hangout.
How are you? Thank you for inviting me back for the Roundup.
Yeah, it's been a while, and people are definitely looking forward to this because you've gathered quite a lengthy set of news and let's say upgrades in the system where we have more of an acceptance toward basic income and solutions in general.
That's the good news, is that it is gaining momentum, and we're seeing a mainstreaming of this idea that it is within our reach, and it's a plausible alternative to what we're seeing now within systemic poverty in all countries around the globe. Everybody is affected. So it's exciting to see that this is really becoming part of the conversation at all levels and in many of the countries around the world. So where would you like to start?
Yeah, well, we have been talking a lot about Canada. We had two hangouts with two people from the Basic Income Canada Network, Tim Ellis and John Sanderson. They've been very active, and we had them in the hangout discussing at length about the Dauphin in Manitoba experiment in the 70s and how that is like a background that currently has been like re-emerging for Canada to take further decisions on basic income. So can you share a little bit about that, Jeanne?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that experiment in Manitoba in the 70s was based on an experiment in the United States first off. So I don't want people to think that it's not possible or hasn't been tried in the United States, just for the home team. But the experiment that was done—
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, I'll find out more about it. It was done in the 1960s. But the impetus in Canada right now is coming from all different areas and all the provinces, all the areas of Canada. Like in the Greater Toronto area right now, 44% of the jobs are considered insecure. So people are working full time and they're not able to make a living. And so this is where the Liberal Party in this year, in 2015, has approved two motions towards a basic income. A pilot project in Calgary and/or Edmonton would happen over a 3 to 5 year period, where they would provide a guaranteed income for a part of the population as a control group, and see what would play out. On Prince Edward Island, another project is going to be happening, where the leader of the opposition party, there were two parties, and they're both calling for a basic income guaranteed pilot program. So that's exciting. And the people of Prince Edward Island went to the polls in May, and they returned all the Liberals to office. And during the campaign, all the different parties supported the proposal of guaranteed income. And there's a working group on Prince Edward Island. It's called the Working Group for Livable Income, who have submitted a proposal that the government would set the minimum income for an adult at $18,000 and $8,000 for every child. Half of the islanders on Prince Edward Island are facing food insecurity, and they're all working people. So this is sort of and I'm going to go on a limb, I'm not sure, but this is not something that the Canadians are used to in terms of their lifestyle has been affected, as have many industrial so-called first world nations right now. So they're seeing their standard of living falling dramatically. And in answer to this, 2 documentary filmmakers this fall are going to create their own experiment on Prince Edward Island. They're going to give money to a family that's currently living below the poverty line, and then they're going to document the impact that it has on their quality of life. So they hope to use this film as a starting point for a dialogue nationwide on the acceptance of a basic income guaranteed. So that should be really good. And then there's the Basic Income Canada Network, which has been hard at work campaigning to set a bottom line of $20,000 as the base income for all Canadians. So Canada is doing great work. So it's exciting. We'll see what happens. And we're going to follow up with these filmmakers and see how that goes too. So would you like me to move on to other countries? Hello? Oh dear.
My internet went off, so sorry for that.
Okay.
Did you get to explain the whole Canadian
Yes.
point about how they are not used to these kind of situations of poverty and instability? And we know that also this comes from the outflows of Canada being part of the North American Free Trade Agreement, which, as we've discussed also in previous Hangouts, it's never in the benefit of the people. No one really, only for those that make the profit. So that is unfortunately one of the outflows, and how it is great that Canadians are really pushing forward toward a basic income, and we are definitely keeping an eye on them. So shall we move on to the next one, Jeanne?
Sure. Yes, your point about the effects of globalization on all countries throughout the world, whether they be first, second, or third world, is noted, and I think that is what is giving impetus to this recognition that something has to be done in terms of providing a standard of living for everybody that provides dignity. In Cyprus, an exciting thing happened in June where they passed a new law giving low-income families a guaranteed minimum income of 480 euros a month. And this serves as a great example to their neighbor, Greece, who has had a little wobble in terms of their commitment and promotion of a living income. So hopefully this will help spur Greece on to also take up with the Syriza party, which makes up about 10% of the Greek voters, declared was an aim that they had. So there is talk of living income in Greece. It's just that given all the other burdens that they are currently under, it's not a priority in terms of electoral discussions.
Yeah,
but go ahead, sorry.
What I'd like to say on Greece is that many people, and ourselves included, are seeing the situation as very confusing because we had this referendum from people voting for austerity, but ultimately there's obviously greater institutions that have decided for the people in the end. And our perspective is that if they are kind of linked to the EU for now, the best way to prevent people from actually going through the very harsh situation that austerity brings, providing a basic income would ameliorate that process if it is inevitable for them. What do you say, Jeanne?
That's well put. That's exactly it. We don't understand how the actual circumstances of how austerity came back to bite Greece in the ass, so to speak. But that being said, that's what's happening now. And the best way to address it, of course, is to address the needs of people and provide a decent standard of living so that, we don't have rioting for food and disruption in that regard. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that proves also how basic income should be the immediate policy that should be implemented to precisely prevent further problems, because no one really wants to suffer. And the only reason is because there's been said that there's not enough money. But we all know that if banks get massive bailouts and there's the quantitative easing, money is there. There is a possibility. So why not using it as this interim process to ameliorate these massive problems that people are suffering through in Greece? And as many people are saying, it's not only the Greek people that are going through this. Any person that is living at a minimum wage and working over 2 jobs to make a living is also part of the Greek standard, so to speak. So it is no longer only a localized problem, but it's really applied all over the world. So anything else, or should we continue?
Well, it's also, the IMF themselves have said that it's important for economies to stabilize, and the only way to have the economy grow is to make sure that everybody is at least stabilized and providing food for their families and able to live. And all the experiments that we have seen in the past, where a living income is provided to people, we see that they do contribute. They do create an economy. They do contribute to the economy and grow the economy. And as you said at the very beginning, we are living in a capitalist system at the moment. And that is why we're pushing a living income guaranteed right now, because it is the immediate response that can correct the massive inequality caused by, in part, globalization and various other sins of capitalism. But it's almost like we have to take care of the first things first, and then we can address more systemic issues. So that's why, for instance, our Equal Life Foundation, we're concentrating on this particular aspect first as a stabilization and fairness issue and human rights issue. Just to continue in Finland, another great example, 65% of the nearly 2,000 candidates for parliamentary elections on April 19th publicly support living income guaranteed, a basic income. And in Hungary, 90% of Hungary's left party, they have 1 seat in parliament and 1 seat at the EU. They voted for basic income to all citizens for 80 euros a month for children, 160 euros for adults. The poverty line in Hungary is now estimated to be 200 euros for a single adult. So it's not a complete living income, but it's a good start. And it would be in Budapest, the district's mayor is the party's co-chair, and he would like to introduce a pilot, a means test minimum income model. So in other words, it would have to be people that show that they are at a poverty level. It wouldn't be what we would suggest, which would be everybody getting a basic income. But another example of a pilot occurring in Europe. And
on a note on the Finland pilot, I've also heard and also read from people in Finland that there is still only this aura of being a proposal by the winning political party, but it is yet to be like completely outlined and made a reality. And there's still an ongoing opposition toward it, which is kind of contradictory because it's by the Social Democracy Party, though everyone agrees that also working unions, trade unions should be focusing on or considering basic income as well, which is something that we've also laid out very early with living income, that instead of having these individualized strikes and striving for a higher wage and so forth, basic income could be an immediate solution, as well as gaining higher wages, which we will also be discussing later on. But then we shall move on to Portugal. What's happening there?
Well, in Portugal, basically, it's a relatively unknown and misunderstood concept, similar to maybe what's facing Hungary. And I think maybe, that point of labor and misunderstanding of what could be accomplished is part of it. The political party Livre has included basic income in its draft political program for the autumn election. I don't have in front of me the amount of people involved in Livre. I can get back to you on that one. So I'll move on to Ireland, or Fianna Fáil, which is the third largest party in the Irish Parliament, in their general election manifesto of 2015, very exciting, they will propose a basic income of 230 euros a week, which is not bad for everybody, regardless of means. And they suggest that that system replace the social welfare payments. In Spain, Podemos is the second largest political party in Spain with over 350,000 members. It's a relatively new party. A number of groups within that are campaigning to make basic income a policy before the upcoming general election scheduled for November. Right now, they're seeking 37,000 signatures for the petition that would force an internal referendum to enshrine basic income as a core policy within their party. And other political organizations throughout Spain are now also proposing a basic income. So that's exciting.
There had been, yeah, it is. And also with the fact that it is mostly a new party, as everyone knows. And there had been a little bit of misunderstanding as to whether it was one of the core points that Podemos was promoting.
Right.
And some people say that they were like backing off. So I guess that's why, yeah, so that's why they're now proposing that it is made one of the core policies, which is great because there is a great support all over the EU, I would say, for basic income, and political parties are emerging to promote it. And so there is maybe the possibility that it is being used to gain people's support, but in order to prevent that they back off, now it's necessary to ensure that it is not something written off, so to speak.
Right, a referendum to enshrine it as a core policy, yes. I mean, this is the thing, I think, getting back to what you said at the beginning about, we see that other, other aspects of society, other, banking, for instance, they're being too big to fail. People are realizing there is the money there. It's just a question of where do we apply it and how can we use that money that we are generating through various multifaceted avenues of revenue, from resources to taxation. I mean, there's numbers of ways to do it. The fact is the money is there. And in Holland, Utrecht is going to be testing the results of an unconditional income, which is really exciting. Utrecht is going to be giving between $900 and $1,450 per month to households that are already receiving welfare. So recipients will be free to spend it as they wish. And it'll be a test. 300 people will be in one of three groups. One is going to get a monthly check, basically $1,000 for each adult and $1,450 for a couple. And they receive the money even if they find a new job or another source of income. And then another group is going to face another set of rules and restrictions, which they didn't outline. And a control group will get benefits based on current welfare laws. So it'll be an experiment which will last for a year, and it will aim to figure out, quote, whether giving people income without any requirements is harmful to them or to the country or economy, and whether it allows people more choice over time when and how they work and gives them more time to spend on caring for family or studying or creating a new business.
Yeah, this experiment is set to begin actually after this summer, in this fall. We will attempt to get someone that is directly promoting it to come to a hangout and explain more on the situation, maybe once that it is running. We will see and keep you all updated on that. Why I consider that it is so important that these kind of pilots are made to work properly is because, as with everything, they will become an example to further make public the idea that basic income is something that can work and that is a genuine solution. So it is in our best interest of everyone that is currently supporting basic income in all its forms and ways to keep an eye on it and to also point out if there is something that could be changed for it to work better, because the better the results, the better the standing of basic income in general becomes. So we will keep an eye on that, and we will be also updating here. So what is going on in the US, being new there as well?
Yeah, well, not enough, but one thing, I mean, Hillary Clinton evidently was asked recently what she how her opinion was on basic income, and she kind of equivocated and was like, oh yeah, she knows it's out there. She's probably got her policy written on it, and it's in the works, hopefully. But the point is that candidates are being asked. It's in the conversation, and people like Bernie Sanders says he's absolutely sympathetic to it. So is Jill Stein. Those are people on the left, but we know the people on the right are also in support of less government, reduced welfare state. We could save money on all kinds of, and every angle, and everybody could be happy. That's the good news about it. Scott Santens, who is head of the American Voice, he's the voice of basic income for the United States. He's doing an interesting thing where he's now crowdfunding his own work. So he's done really well. He's achieved his midpoint expectations on funding, and he moderates an online community on the website Reddit, which has over 25,000 subscribers. So there are people in the United States and around the world that are really interested in this subject and are on a daily basis discussing all the different permutations of it.
Yeah, what is fascinating about Scott Santens, he's been also in a Hangout earlier on, and he was beginning his Patreon, and he had barely like 4 people around there when he started. And it's fascinating because it proves that anyone with such consistency and dedication and having the time for it as well can become a voice for it. And he's been invited now in places like RT, and many people are reading his articles now in Huffington Post. And it's awesome to see this. I personally also support him because the more the merrier toward the single same goal and outcome, which really proves that when people decide to make waves, let's say in the media, specifically on Reddit, Twitter, and so forth, there is a possibility to start integrating basic income into the conversation. So for anyone that wants to follow him, it's at 2NOAME, 2NOAME. Look for him, follow him. He's always got the fresh news on basic income as well. And we thank him for his work as well.
Right. I mean, his crowdfunding is $1 a month, and so he's got like 760 people who are giving him $1 a month. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yes, and we've had also other people in the Hangouts that have been doing the basic income patron pledge. Jamie Klinger was one of them. So let's follow the people that are doing the same and join it, because it's also part of proving how people can support other people eventually, to not make it a crowd-funded thing, but well, I would say that it is a public funded thing, because it would be everyone's money given to everyone.
Right.
The real sharing economy, I would say.
Right, and it helps us redefine what Guy Standing is talking about, the need to redefine what we think of as work. And, work, certainly Scott is doing so much great work, and why shouldn't he be funded? And it's, it's great to give money and help support people that are doing work that's not part of the corporate, establishment. This is an alternative economy that's actually being created based on a new notion of work, which is to support each other. So that's like a whole, step into another dimension of our potential, if you will, as human beings.
Yeah, and of funding new media as well, because he's definitely also debating and responding to any article that questions basic income and its viability. So that's definitely supportive for all of us in general that want this kind of solutions in place. So let's move on to France. What is going on there?
France is very cool. An opinion poll recently showed in May that 60% of the French support basic income. So that was on both sides of the political spectrum. So that was very cool. And in July 2nd in 2015, this year, the Namibian Minister for Poverty Eradication confirmed that his government is considering a basic income grant. The coalition previously did do an experiment with very positive results. So that is, we know the Namibian project was one of the very first big projects. And now they're, it was so successful, and they've gotten enough feedback now that they're considering reinstating that. So that would be very, interesting to follow as well. Go ahead.
And the same has also gone on in Kenya and Uganda. Can you share a little bit on those two?
Yes. The other experiments included, or trials, where the Ugandan government gave one group of people a year's worth of income, which was in Uganda was about $380 without restriction. And it found that the people who had got that money invested in skills and businesses, which wound up 65% more likely to practice. They were 65% more likely to practice a skilled trade over those who didn't have that. And they worked an extra 17 hours on average compared to those who didn't get the cash. They saw a 41% increase in earnings in 4 years, indicating the impact had lasting results. And in Kenya, they found that after poor families in rural areas were given unconditional $513 a month, that their incomes were 33% higher than the control group a year later. Their assets were 58% higher. Their hunger was reduced and their psychological well-being was increased. And similar pilot studies have been done in Liberia and Mexico and South Africa. And I have to say, like, one of my favorite ones was when I just found out about, which was in 1996, a little known and unintentional experiment occurred with the Cherokee Indians, who had a casino, and they have approximately 15,000 members, and they just gave their community a share in the gambling wealth, and the payouts have risen from $500 to about $10,000 per person per year. And they found that those getting the payments were one grade ahead in school compared to those who didn't, that their overall mental health improved, their behavioral problems decreased by 40%, the crime rate decreased by 22%, poverty was cut in half, graduation rates went up. It was just a huge win-win. It's a great example of an argument against people that say, oh, if you give money to people that just sit around and smoke pot, or, you know, they won't work or whatever. And so it shows that, you know, these are examples of really great examples of how beneficial these kinds of unconditional grants can be, when people don't have to worry about where they're going to, you know, how they're going to eat, how they're going to wash their children, how they're going to provide. And they can go on and be as creative as anyone else.
What's great about this experiment is that it focused a lot on the psychological effect, which should be one of the primary aspects, because we look at the mental problems going on in America and so many people falling into drugs. But it's been said many times that people resort to these kind of behaviors and self-destruction and drug abuse because of stress, because of living in an environment that is not supportive. So the more, I mean, we definitely support any basic income pilot project that is, of course, good enough to prove that people definitely become better living individuals in terms of becoming a supporter in their society, becoming active, becoming productive, not only in the ways that are expected by the system, but really being remunerated by the work that they do, such as taking care of children and many other forms of psychological support that is sometimes not even considered as work in itself. So this will be one of the points that many more people in the US would have to look back into and read the research, because this is something that proves that it is a win-win situation. And I mean, that's a great point to prevent the ongoing crisis and that the industry, mental health industry, is going on, and also a way to prevent more and more pharmaceutical industries from earning more money because of these disorders, and rather tackling the root and cause of the problem, right?
That's right. And,
okay, so we go on to, yeah,
no,
go ahead.
Well, I was just saying how grateful how wonderful it is that it's attached to the Native American, this example, you know, especially the Native American community, which has been so, you know, horribly reduced in their lifestyle and life expectancy, and it would be great to anything that could support the restitution of their rights and ability to live decently. So anyway.
We go on to discuss some other related news, not only to basic income, but also other suggestions, changes that we advocate for as part of the living income guaranteed. So let's talk about the minimum wage increase versus the guaranteed income debate. So what is going on here, Jean?
Well, that's been a lot of people have said, why don't we just increase the minimum wage and forget about a guaranteed income? And one of the reasons why we think that a guaranteed income is superior to a minimum wage is that employers have a simple means to work around minimum wage. It wouldn't necessarily take care of those who fall in the poverty, under poverty. They would just hire fewer workers. So a guaranteed basic income is not a disincentive for firms to hire more workers, as the minimum wage could be if it were raised. So, basic income would raise the welfare of everyone rather than just those who are employed. Because let's not forget, like even in the United States, to be fully employed is a rarity at this point. And despite the free market socialist thinkers advocating the idea that the living income has been criticized, societies are too poor to afford it, and that it would be a disincentive to work. So those are the two major arguments against it. And the first objection we've already talked about, which is that, of course, we have the money. And the bankers, as Max Kaiser said, are already on a basic income. It's called quantitative easing. So, and the right, the other disincentive for that we're too poor, okay, then there would be a disincentive to work. We've shown in these pilot projects that's not true, and we'll continue to see those results, confirm that that's not true, that the basic, that people's inclination is to work, it is to be creative, it is to create. It may not be work as we know it, and it may be because there is no work as we know it, as we'll go on to discuss with automation and things like that. But people do want to work, and the right will like it in the sense of empowering the individual. So there's less bureaucrats telling people how to live. There's less means testing programs. There's less bureaucracy in general. And
we also got the point of realizing the reciprocity that this would create when you give people not only the ability to have a basic income, but give higher wages. People that do decide to work will be very well remunerated, but at the same time, the general standard of living will be so good that people will feel and be supported, which at a psychological level also prompts us to kind of give back in one way or another. So as you're saying, it is not only the usual notion of work, but in many other ways that maybe we haven't even discovered yet because there's no time for it.
Exactly. There's unforeseen consequences, positive outcomes that could become shocking and amazing.
And talking about this, then there's the automation subject, which is a growing discussion and reason as to why we need a basic income, a living income. So what is going on?
Well, it's not to say that this is like this huge behemoth that, oh my God, all of a sudden we're automated. No, I mean, obviously it's been a slow rise of automation, technology, and we all know that it's rendered certain industries and jobs obsolete. But the main thing it's done is re-centralized wealth into smaller and smaller hands. And that's really the problem, where you could have huge companies like Google, but they're only employing a fraction of the amount of people that, say, Kodak used to employ, who made film products and things like that. And so this is creating this greater problem of inequality. A study from Oxford last year found that 47% of jobs are actually going to be at risk of computerization over the next 2 decades. So that's a very short amount of time to have a massive instability in terms of what work is and what is available. And in the July-August issue of this month's Atlantic magazine, Derek Thompson, the author, said that people who work and expect to hold a conventional job, the number of people who can expect to hold a conventional job will continue to drop, and that the needs of the economy and the needs of the people in it can actually be met without requiring the labor of everybody. And he proposes that a minimum income would allow people to, instead of pushing against technology and automation, allow us to participate in it. And I think that's a great angle, which is that, instead of this reactionary, Luddite, response to technology, in other words, we're working with what's here. We may not approve of all of the usages of technology, but certainly if we could, use our creativity to support life rather than fight against digital, outsourcing and what happens with, losing our jobs that way. They said that 40% of millennials will be replaced by robots before the age of their retirement. And that group of younger people have been particularly interested in B.I.G. because they know, and LIG, because they know that that's what's coming down the pike for them.
I agree, and I include myself into that. And I would also say that the notion of work, then, as Guy Stanley was also sharing yesterday with Max Kaiser, has to be redefined so that we no longer define the usual jobs that will be replaced by machines. And that I agree, because then, as you say, we can use ourselves to better outcomes and to support in ways that a machine cannot do: psychological support, educational support, a more human aspect that can be developed once that everyone has more time to actually get in contact with each other and develop this sense of community, which is completely lost when everyone is living at the survival mode.
Working 3 jobs just to pay the rent, really.
Exactly. And no one wants to live like that. It's only creating more problems. So obviously we've realized we have to look at the root and cause of the problem. So therefore we need not only machines to replacing non-being jobs, but also to enable us to free our time for something more meaningful and to learn how to really live, because we're merely surviving for now. Let's move on to the narrowing the income gap and the positive income economic return. So can you tell us about it?
Well, as I mentioned before, even the International Monetary Fund, is mandating that these countries try to stabilize their economies, because it's not good for anyone. There's no positive income or economic return for having these destabilized economies with and knowing that these corporate profits are at an all-time high and demand for labor is falling. You have a real problem, and the decline in GDP in the US and the UK in the last 3 decades, as we know, is dramatic. And a living income can support labor in working people in many ways, because it disperses the purchasing power, so that people are buying locally, they're supporting their local economies. And it gives individual workers the ability to bargain for higher wages, because they're not prisoners of their economic, race to the bottom. Taxation, one economist, Steve Randy, says that taxation may have to go up for low-income people, in general for everyone. But his point is that these people who are now low-income, who will now be risen up, spend that money on local economies and on essentials. So it becomes a stimulus. And in that way, perfect for a country like Greece, where it would create the local demand and drive employment even higher. So that is the advantages of narrowing the income gap and inequality. So, and this gets to an idea of what is it that, how do we create a new version of this capitalism to make it work? And even though it might be extreme to say it's a jobless future, the debate is really under this aegis of how can we design what we have now, so that there isn't this huge gap. It's not okay for the tech elite and the 0.001% to get richer and everyone else to lose their jobs and get poor. And that is really our solution here. The LIG, the BIG is the immediate solution for this huge disparity that's only getting worse by the minute, really.
And we also agree that there will be a need for more in-depth structural alignments and corrections to the system itself. And what we have said from the very beginning is that we see that basic income is definitely one stepping stone to get everyone out of the problem, like right away. But along with that, to restructure and redefine capitalism is something that will entail many angles, many perspectives, many forces, so to speak. And that the best way to begin doing this is by looking at what kind of principles could be integrated into it. So I've recommended before to read Regenerative Capitalism by John Fullerton. And he used to work in JP Morgan, and he has written this document, which is quite profound, I'd say, in the sense that it is implementing and talking about principles that we definitely agree with. And he has come up with this idea that we no longer have to look only at sustainability in the system, but regeneration. And these principles where we'll have to consider the systems of the earth and how we make our capitalist system operate in a similar fashion, which will entail that all forms of abuse would have to be diminished. So that would be a note also on how to construct this new notion of capitalism, and hopefully we can make a hangout specifically on that one.
Right.
But let's go on to, we have some minutes left,
Okay.
about the precariat, because we saw Guy standing yesterday on Max Kaiser. So if you'd like to share what he shared there.
I was very impressed with this, with his presentation with Max Kaiser. He talks about a new, what he calls the precariat class, which is disaffiliated migrants, temporary workers who suffer from systemic insecurity around the world. So it doesn't just affect the first world, it affects first, second, and third world. This is a direct result, what he calls it, from globalization. And the characteristic that's most profound is that the precariat has a level of education greater than the labor that they are expected to do. And this creates great instability in society because the precariat class is increasingly frustrated, and they become dangerous because they have no voice, and they become vulnerable to the siren of what he calls the siren calls of extreme political parties. You become vulnerable because of your desperation. So he's a big activist for unconditional basic income, and he's the one that brought up this rethinking of what we define as work, which reiterated in my mind how important that specific area is, and that the traditional jobs are disappearing, and technology is increasing inequality. And so how do we address the unmet needs of all over the world? Those massive amounts of unmet needs is work. So the work isn't disappearing, it's just how we define what that work is. And obviously there's tremendous amounts of work that needs to be done. And just to get back to your point about, working with the environment, making sure that we're not abusing the environment, and having that as integral part of our philosophy. It's not to create a blame where some people get blamed for their carbon footprint and then are taxed. And I mean, there's all kinds of ways that we have to be aware of how we can be, how this identity and how this mandate for equality can be abused. And as he points out, we could become vulnerable to the siren calls of extremism, right? We're just talking about stabilizing economies, stabilizing people's lives.
Absolutely. And with this also comes the support for many other people that are looking at basic income studies that also Guy Standing has been participant of. There's been a book that he's released about the experiment in India, which is also very relevant. And this is part of what the new, I would say, the new foundation to prove that it in fact works, and that it should be what economists we suggest are currently studying, what has been tested on the ground, because there's no better way to look at the results but from that data. So thanks to also Guy Standing for being quite the spokesperson and directly involved with pilot projects for basic income.
Very cool.
So, Jeanne, shall we go quite quickly through the social dividend and citizen income point?
Well, yeah, that's like the Alaskan income resource dividend that we've discussed on previous Hangouts, where every citizen in Alaska gets now up to $1,500 unconditionally, man, woman, child. Peter Barnes, an American entrepreneur, argues that this is another way we can fund a supplementary source of income for people, that we start with dividends based on our air and financial infrastructure shares that could pay dividends of several $1,000s a year. And that's an interesting avenue to look at. They would address a number of concerns, and people providing a non-labor supplement, our co-owned resources. We've talked about that resource, benefits, shared resources. Another professor, Thomas Poge, proposes that each nation redistributes a small portion of the value of its natural resources to finance a global resource dividend. So these are all different ideas that are coming out of this basic, which started actually, one of the first proponents was Thomas Paine, which is a citizen's income based on resource dividends. And that can be parsed any number of ways, and it's been discussed in all these different versions. And I think it's a very workable, interesting, sustainable pattern away from these, current arguments against what is possible in terms of providing. Where does the money come from? Women are,
and also a way to counteract the process that corporations have been taken on in terms of using the resources only for their own benefit, which we've discussed previously on the TPP. So we will also suggest to watch that hangout. But yes, let's go to the Basic Income and Women Action Group.
Yeah, I just found out about that. It started in April. It's a broad goal of a group, connect women within the basic income movement, and to connect them with other social justice activists. So it's kind of a way to make a coalition of a women's action. So I'll keep abreast of that and report back. I guess I like this quote from Naomi Klein. She says, there has to be stronger social safety nets, because when people don't have options, they're going to make bad choices. And that's what we see. It's people taking incredible risks. The world is so unstable right now. The universal sense of a basic income would help transform the way that we treat and think about our whole physical, social environment.
Yes, also we have the last note, which is about a Norwegian artist, Inger Sitter, maybe that's how it's pronounced.
Very good.
What did she propose? Can you tell us?
Yeah, I found out about Inger Sitter. She died in March at 85 years old, and she was one of really the only abstract expressionist painters, I guess, in Norway that had received international fame. And she really worked hard on behalf of artists and laboring the Labor Party to provide a guaranteed income for artists, which, we would definitely support. And she said that, she noted that Holland and Ireland were the only other countries that had such programs. But I liked what she said at the end. And she said, she goes, you get the art that you deserve. And in Norway, unfortunately, she said, kitsch flourishes. So she wanted to secure this for Norway. She saw that music and literature was, promoted and supported, but art was not. And so just a note of thanks to Inger Sitter for her recognition that, you get the art you deserve, and artists deserve to be supported for their work. And that falls under our category of redefining work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is also a page, Basic Income for Artists. We will place a link for them as well, because everyone is realizing that not only your profession defines your necessity to live, of course, you are a human being, and it's great to have more and more people joining with the same principles. As just to finalize, Jeanne, for sure we will have you some other time in a few months to keep an update on the various basic income, the pilot programs, and any other relevant news. Any last words that you'd like to share for this?
Well, I think I'd like to come back, and we were going to talk about remunicipalization, which is a mouthful, which is an interesting another way to think about gaining momentum and financing for a basic income. So I hope we can investigate what that is and how it's been working and what it could provide. And maybe that could be a future hangout.
Yeah, absolutely. We will have you then here to present that topic for all of our viewers. So thanks a lot for your time and your dedication to this list of investigation and really encouraging efforts around the world. Thanks for that.
Great. Thank you. Keep up the good work, everybody.
You, the viewer. Yes, thanks to everyone that has been made this list possible. And let's keep the voice going, echoing the effort and voices around the support for basic income or any of its forms, because in the end it's about the principle, and that's what we stand for here. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.